Hey guys, so in this video I'll be ranking the main protagonists from each of the mainline numbered Final Fantasy games, with the exception of the MMOs 11 and 14, in order of dick size. Now, as far as I'm aware, Square Enix has yet to reveal any official information on character dick sizes through any of the Ultimanias or any other official works, so this is entirely based on my own knowledge and opinions of the games, as well as the character designs. I'm a wee bit more familiar with some games than others, so if you have some information that maybe contradicts what I've said, or even if you just plain disagree with me for any reason at all, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. A couple of things just before we start. First and foremost, spoiler warning. I won't be going hugely in depth, but I will be discussing some late game story elements from some of these games, so please bear that in mind. I will not be including any specific discussion of girth here. We'll be presuming average, or rather proportional girth. This is partly because I don't feel there are any particular outliers in terms of thickness or lack thereof amongst our main protagonists, and partly just to keep things simple for this first video. Things will get a bit more complicated when we come to do the villains and antagonists, and I still haven't quite decided whether or not to add some more nuanced tiers or perhaps rank based on a length times girth volumetric calculation, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and if you have any thoughts or ideas, again, please let me know in the comments. As you can see, I'll be using TierMaker to help me with this, and with all that being said, let's just jump straight into it. So, first up here we have the Warrior of Light. So, in the original Final Fantasy game for the NES, the Warriors of Light were your party, and your party was made up of 4 characters that you chose based on sort of preset classes. So there was no actual Warrior of Light character as such. In Dissidia, and in most of the spin-offs, he's portrayed as a sort of generic hero avatar, and he doesn't really have all that much personality beyond, defend what is good and defeat what is evil, so there's not really a whole lot to go on. We'll pop him somewhere in the middle here. He looks like he'd have no issues satisfying the princess, but that would be assuming he hasn't sacrificed himself for the greater good somewhere along the way. Here we go. Right, next up we've got Cloud, and I'm going to get the obvious thing out of the way first, the Buster Sword. Now, I've heard some people arguing over whether using such a ludicrously oversized weapon is an attempt at compensation, or whether it's actually some form of advertising, but in reality I don't think it's either. Cloud received the Buster Sword from Zack. He never chose it as such. He used it initially due to his delusion of essentially being Zack, and then continued to use it afterwards, purely because it was what he was used to. It was the most effective weapon in his hand, so I don't really feel that the Buster Sword is relevant to the discussion around the size of Cloud's dick. Prior to the events of the games, Cloud grew up as a bit of a loner. He would get into fights and he was simping over Tifa, and that would indicate a mental state more in line with the lower end of this list, but for the first half or so of the game he does exude an air of cool confidence, and after rediscovering himself in the live stream, he comes to accept himself for who he is and his role as the leader of the party. I think given what we know about Cloud, we have to put him either in the high end of the 4.5 to 5.9 tier, or the low end of the 6.0 tier. We can't put him in the upper tiers because he definitely seems like the kind of guy who's a bit insecure about his dick size, but I am hesitant to rank him too low because I get the feeling he's at least average, maybe even a little above, and Tifa is perfectly happy with it, so I think we'll settle on, probably the top end of the average tier. Here we go. Right, Terra. So as far as we're aware, Terra is female and doesn't have a dick. Could she, in theory, grow a dick when she transforms into her Esper form? Absolutely. And if I was a betting man, I'd wager she definitely has. And it was probably gargantuan, but for the purposes of this list, we'll be sticking to sort of main base forms only, so we'll go ahead and pop Terra in the no dick tier. Varian. Now, I haven't actually played Final Fantasy II as yet, so it's difficult for me to place Varian accurately. To my knowledge, he's a generally heroic guy with a bit of a weakness for women. His various character portraits aren't really tipping me one way or the other, to be honest, so I think I'm just going to place him in the bottom of the 6.0 tier. More than enough to get the job done, but nothing to write home about. Go. Now, Zidane. Zidane goes here, 9+. Now hear me out. Let's ignore everything Zidane says and does in game for a second and just focus on his origin. Zidane is a genome, part of a race of beings who were artificially created in order to host the souls of a dying planet. Now, if you had to create yourself a new body from scratch, to host your soul, or the soul of someone you cared about, would you or would you not give this body a massive dick? Of course you would. Now, Zidane may be different from other genomes in that he already has a soul and was created as an angel of death to sow and reap destruction on the land of Gaia, blah blah blah, but he was still created in basically the same way. So, yeah. In fact, just look at this guy. Look at that face. There's no way he isn't packing a monster. Plus, I would imagine his tail helps him with a bit of counterbalance when he goes full mast, so Zidane, 9+ tier, no doubt. And on the other end of the spectrum we have the Onion Knight. In the original Final Fantasy III, Onion Knight was a class rather than a character in and of himself, as far as I'm aware. So, like the Warrior of Light, will be taking his Dissidia version. Unfortunately, due to his small stature, possibly young age, general demeanour, although I said he's not much of a character outside of spin-offs, we are going to have to place Onion Knight right down at the bottom here. Yeah, sorry Onion Knight fans, but just looking at the guy, I'm afraid I can't put him anywhere else. Sorry. Right, moving on, we've got Cecil. So Cecil's an interesting one because his journey from Dark Knight to Paladin can actually be extrapolated in a way to his dick. He is the ultimate grower. Now he starts out a bit shy and insecure, his flaccid dick's probably no bigger than Onion Knight's. However, he opens himself up, he regains his sense of self, and his dick more than doubles in size. He's the kind of guy who, tries to cover himself up in the showers, and, there might even be rumours flying about how he's got a small dick, but once he trusts someone enough to really open up and get a hard-on in front of them, they'll likely be very impressed. I'll pop him up here. But, now, 5 is another game I'm not hugely familiar with, but based on the artwork alone, I'm getting huge, skinny twink with a colossal member vibes from Bart's. Those guys whose dicks are already massive, but look even bigger because they themselves are so slender. Ideal for shooting pornos. 9 inches plus, minimum. Right, next up, Squall, another interesting one. A graduate of Balham Garden Military Academy and mercenary, Squall is a bit of a loner, but he never seems to lack confidence. He's a consummate professional who always gets the job done. When Irvin pussies out of taking that shot against Adia, he did take the shot eventually, but whatever. Squall, he didn't hesitate to jump off a building, steal a car, bum rush her and Cypher solo. Never gave in to the torture in the aftermath of that. He took command of Balham Garden when needed and immediately ordered all students to defend the hot dogs at all costs. A true leader. When he decides he's in love with a girl who's passed out, fuck it, carries her across a transcontinental railway by himself on his back. Later on, jumps out of a spaceship to save her, and then clears out an entire alien infestation, basically solo. No one used Renoa, fight me, and then he pilots that ship back to Earth. He is the legendary Seed, and he has balls of steel. Quistis wants him, Renoa wants him. Selphie's settling for Irvin, but we all know she wants Squall's gunblade. Major big dick vibes. The only thing holding him back are his occasional whiny pussy outbursts, which do betray the fact that while he is packing, he's probably not the biggest guy in the room. Therefore, I'm going to put Squall square in the middle of the 8.9 tier. Right, Van. While technically the protagonist, isn't even really the main character in his own game. Balthier, Bash, even Fran give off more big dick energy than Van. Not to say he's small or anything, but like his role in Final Fantasy XII, he's just kind of meh. Tidus, or Tidus, however you want to say it, is an athlete at the top of his game. He's a star player who, despite his daddy issues, is generally friendly and cheerful to everyone. He's the kind of guy who you'd love to hate. He's successful, handsome, popular, probably rich, but you just can't quite bring yourself to really dislike the guy. The only reaction you'd have to see in his dick would be, of course he's packing. But you can't be too big, because then you'd be getting dangerously close to just disliking him again, so we'll pop him here at the top of the 7.4 tier. Right, I don't think Lightning has a dick. That's just my opinion, and you're welcome to make your own list, but on mine she's going here. Okie doke, and last but not least we've got Noctis. Now, Noctis is a crown prince and chosen king who is destined to save the world from certain destruction. He also writes letters to his crush, goes on road trips with his buddies, and loves to fish. Noctis is also a likeable everyman who, despite the enormous weight of his destiny, is essentially an ordinary guy who was just born into extraordinary circumstances, you know? He's just like you or me. He's an ordinary guy and therefore must have an ordinary dick. Otherwise his credibility and likability are kind of ruined. I'll pop him here, right in the middle. Right, so that is the list. I hope you guys enjoyed. As I said at the start, if you disagree with me, if you have your own thoughts, please don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. That's all for today. I'll see you in the next one.